All right, today we're going to cover replacing the inner components of our tongue jack on the 5.3, 7.3. Same similar process and steps will take place for your rear leveling legs as well. In most situations, if a component goes bad inside here and this outer cylinder is intact, no damage has occurred to it on the tongue jack, we send you out the components to replace the guts of this tongue jack. So that's what we're going to do today. Be mindful. You want to definitely set up some jack stands as we have here currently underneath the draw tubes of the A-frame. We've raised the unit up higher and set the jacks underneath and then lowered the unit back down on the front of the A-frame there, helping support it. To do this repair, you may end up needing to pull the tongue jack completely off the unit, which in this case we do. So if you were able to get this unit high enough and support it high enough, you may be able to drop the inner tube out of the tongue jack straight out through the bottom. We're unable to do that, so we do have the unit supported. Preferably 2 jack stands, 1 on each draw tube. We only have 1. This is a small unit. It's just a mock-up trailer, real light, so we don't need 2. So to get started, first thing we're going to try to do, if at all possible, if your jack isn't able to be ran, don't worry about it. If you are able to run it, retract it as far up as you can just to give you a maximum amount of room to work with. If it's broke, leave it where it's at. Remove the foot pad, or if you have a wheel for wheeling it around and transporting your unit, yeah, you can have that in there. Take that out as well. So we want just an empty tube here at the end. From that point, we are going to start with one of the plugs in the harnesses here. And male and female end, unplug them. That is your harness going to the tongue jack. The other harness is going to be part of your communication wires, and that's going to be plugged into the back of your screen. We're going to get to that here in just a second. First thing we're going to do is remove that top lid from the base of the tongue jack cover. In order to do that, you're going to want a long number 2 bit. This one is fairly long, longer one than this, like a 12, 18 inch number 2 square bit. There's going to be 2 areas up underneath the lid or the body of it next to the lights. There'll be 2 fasteners there, and then there's going to be one in the back in this recessed area of the body of the cover. This is where a longer bit comes in handy. And as you're pulling your bit back out of there, the screw will drop down. Just make sure you find it. You don't want to lose any of your fasteners. Put them in a safe area where you're not going to lose those. And we're going to remove the other 2 fasteners as well. And the last one. And then your 3rd fastener. Set those off to the side for safekeeping. At this point, you should be able to lift your lid with the screen intact. Notice the screen, we didn't have to remove any screws or anything from it. The whole top of the lid will come off. There's a quick connect on the back of the screen with a white plug. Pinch it and then pull that off of the back of the screen. And then in some cases, you'll have 2 wires, a red and a black. Disconnect those. Those are for your LED lights in the tongue jack. Now you can set your lid and the screen intact off to the side. Once those are off to the side, you should be able to take that communication wire with the white plug and feed it right back down through the hole of the jack or the cover there, and then pull it right out through a big large hole in the bottom. We'll have to feed that back up through there when we reassemble the jack. At this point, we're going to remove the entire tongue jack from the A-frame. Like I said, in some cases, you may be able to do this with it still intact and left on the A-frame. You usually 13 metric socket or a 9/16. It's typically what these bolts are. Just make sure you're using the right one. You don't strip those out. Set those off to the side so you don't lose those either. There should be 3 fasteners. And from there, we're going to take the jack, pick it up, and pull it right out of there as soon as we get these wires out of the way, stopping us from pulling this one out of here. In this case, we've zip tied all the wiring down below. We're just snapping our harness loose, our zip tie loose there. Now we're able to go ahead and pull that jack all the way up out of there. Set it on a table. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to drop this cover down. Should slide right on down, like so. Next, we're going to take 1/2 inch on both sides of the motor. We're going to remove those 2 and pull the motor off of the tube. So 1/2 inch. This motor can be on there with a real tight, snug fit, and it may be useful to have like a soft rubber mallet to tap this loose. We should be able to wiggle it off of here. Set those 2 fasteners off to the side. We don't want to lose those. We should be able to wiggle this motor loose and take it off the top of the shaft here. Like I said, a rubber mallet does come in handy. Tap on the bottom areas, try not to hit the motor to get this removed. All right, so once you get that motor either tapped off of there with a rubber mallet or pulled off, the next thing you're going to do is there's going to be a coupler. This is an engagement to the motor and to your worm gear inside here. We're going to pull that loose. Should pull right off of the pin. And then inside there, you're going to see a dowel pin that's going across there. We're going to need to line that up with a set of your holes over here on the side of the jack. So we should be able to physically turn this now that the motor's not engaged until it lines up with one of these side holes. From there, you take a small punch or a screwdriver, and we should be able to poke that pin all the way through there. Till the pin falls out. Once that dowel pin is out, set that off to the side. You don't want to lose that. You're going to need that for later on. On top of here is going to be a flat washer. So it should be flat washer, the dowel pin, and then the coupler before reinserting the motor. From this point, now that our dowel pin is out of there, we do have that flat washer in there still. We're going to pull straight up on that outer tube until that outer tube is off and sitting out of the way. This is what we're going to end up sending you out. The inner working components of the tongue jack, the stack up on top of the spindle will be a spacer, a black flat washer, and then a packed bearing. From this point, you'll need to take that jack, locate the front of that jack. It's going to have 3 little dimples or embosses in the tube. That should align with this track. This little track where you see that grease. If the new part doesn't have any grease, any all-purpose grease, any one of your hardware stores or automotive stores will work. Grease up the outer part of this tube and that channel. Slide everything over the top, aligning the groove with the embosses That's just ensuring that this thing can't twist inside there. Set it down on there. From there, your stack up is going to be on the outside, your flat washer. Once again, we will have to put that pin in place to lock all this in there. And we are going to want to align our hole with one of these side holes here on the side of the tube. And we have that, then we can take our pin, shove our pin back in, our dowel pin. You may find this easier with a small punch or screwdriver to shove that back in. And we're going to want that evenly spaced in there. We don't want that pin all to one side. Our coupler's got to fit over that, so you will have to center that pin before adding your coupler back on. Once your coupler is seated over top of it, wouldn't hurt to dab a little grease on the top of that coupler. Now we can go ahead and engage our motor. The motor is going to come and sit down on the front side of this tube in alignment with those dimples at the bottom. That's where your motor's going. Once we got that on top of there, we need to make sure that this engaged with that coupler, or else the motor will run, but the jack won't move. It is engaged and our holes are lined up on either side. We can go ahead and insert those 1/2-inch bolts. Get those pre-started on both sides. Make sure our alignment is correct. And then we'll take our 1/2-inch socket and we'll snug these up. Hand snug is fine. There isn't a torque spec on this. It's just hand snug. You don't need to bear down on this. You can strip out the threads in the tube. Just hand snug. Other side. Now that we have the motor back on, when we lift this up, our tube won't drop out at the bottom like it did originally, as we have that pin in there with that washer holding everything in place. Now, if we wanted to, we can go ahead to reassemble everything, set this back on the tongue jack, or the tongue jack back on the coupler, sorry. Align it with the holes in the coupler and the bottom jack plate below. Pull that cover up out of the way there. Grab my 3 fasteners. Line my holes up and insert those. And then go ahead and take my socket, my impact, tighten those down tight. Sure that you're getting a tight fit all the way around. Once that's tight and in place, now we need to go ahead and start snaking our communication wire back up through the bottom hole in that lower cover. Right through the big hole. Should be able to follow, should be able to follow that up through here. And it doesn't matter what side it goes on, inside the cover. We just want to make sure that the motor's not in the way. Now you will have a plug in there that you need to pull through that hole going down. That's going to be where you're plugging your harness in. So your female end of your plug comes down through, communication wire travels back up through that same hole. Now that we have our communication wire up through there and our harness, our female plug coming out through it, we can go ahead and grab our lid that we took off earlier, set that up here on top of the motor, hook up our light wires, our LED lights. Make sure that they should only be able to go one way, but make sure you took a mental note or a photo of which wire went to which. Then we will take our communication wire, plug it into the screen itself, the touch screen, clips in. Adding pressure to the bottom of the body of the cover, holding up on it, and then pushing down on the lid itself. Should be able to see this all sealed up and that the lid is sitting appropriately on the lower portion of the body of the cover here. Once it is, and you have that in place, now you can go ahead and use your long square bit again. Grab your screws that you removed from the lower portion of the motor cover. We're going to start at the front here just to hold this in place. This is a little easier to get to. And we're going to tighten up one of these screws. Be sure not to over torque this. It's going into plastic. Lightly snug. That's holding everything in place for you. Now you can grab a second fastener, do the other side. And one more in the back. Until it catches. Using a longer bit is key to that, getting that one in and out. Now that everything is back to normal and back together like we should have it, our communication wire is plugged in. We need to go ahead and connect our harness to our female plug. That should clip in place. We can go ahead and add a zip tie back around these if we'd like. From there, we're going to go ahead and add our foot pad, get power back to the coach. Battery should be full at that point. Turn our screen on, operate our tongue jack in tongue jack mode or manual mode, extend it down and get it back off onto the ground and off of the jack stands. At that point, your repair is finished.